Okay, today we are going to start a new section of notes. So far, everything that we've done with HTML is all about text. And so what we're going to start getting into now is making your page a little more dynamic, a little more attractive. So I put this into a section together. We're going to talk about images. We are also going to talk about links. And we're going to start with the images. So first thing we need to mention is that there are many different file types when it comes to pictures on a computer or on a web page. But what we're going to talk about are just the most common ones. And so the first one, which is probably the most common, that is what we call a JPEG. A JPEG picture, when you see the file name on a computer, will have an extension at the end, a file extension .jpg. That is what identifies the type of file. This is what is considered to be the universal file format, or excuse me, universal picture format. So if you take a picture with your phone, if you take a picture with a digital camera, those are going to be in JPEG format. So that's what you'll run across the most. Another one that is very popular nowadays is a PNG style picture. So again, it will have a .png at the end of the file name, and that's the extension to identify it. And what this stands for is Portable Networks Graphic. Portable Network Graphics. And what makes it different from a JPEG picture is that it offers transparency, meaning that if I put it on a web page, it will float over the background. If I have a JPEG picture, it's going to have a square or rectangular shape to it, and a PNG file won't. It'll take the shape of whatever the image is. So it's a little more appealing on a website because you don't have extra blank white space behind an image. And then a third type that we'll talk about is a GIF file, and those you'll have an extension of a .gif after it. GIF files are ones that you see that have like simple animations to them. They're not only used for animations, but that's what they're most popular for. One of the things that is a negative about them is that they're very limited in colors. Okay, so a GIF picture can only handle 256 different color values, whereas a JPEG and a PNG can support millions of colors. But again, that's a limitation. However, a bonus for it is that it can be animated. And another thing that's good about a GIF file is that it's good for text. So if you had some sort of a company logo that you wanted as an image, GIF files are great for that. JPEGs are not. JPEGs kind of distort text in an image sometimes. Okay, so those are our three most common file types. Really quickly, I think what I'm going to do is show you a sample of them. So I'm just going to use Google Images as a search, okay? First thing I'm going to do is just search for a picture of sunshine, JPG to specify that. And here's a picture right here. I'll click through to see the actual full image. Again, this is the most common type of file. If I decide I want to download it, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Save Image As. Okay, and if I save it to the desktop of my computer, you can see right here, Save As Type JPEG Image. So you're not going to see .jpg at this screen, but the fact that it's showing it right here tells you that that is the extension. So I'm going to save that to my desktop. I'm going to put it in this folder just so I don't lose it, as my desktop is cluttered. Okay, now let me go back and do another search. And this time I'm going to do a sunshine PNG. And immediately on this page, one of the things you're going to notice is that little checkerboard, gray and white. That is showing the transparency. That will not appear on a page, only the image itself. So let me choose this one and click View Image. Okay, when I clicked View Image, it automatically downloaded it. No, that is not what I wanted. I'm going to try a different one. Let me try this one. Again, you can see that checkerboard appearance. I'm going to click through. When you're looking for images online, you always want to click View Image and get all the way through. There it is. If you look at my top address bar, you'll see at the end .png. That's going to identify that it's this type of graphic. I'm going to download this, and you'll see Save as Type PNG image. I'm going to click Save, and I'm going to do one more search, and I'm going to do Sunshine GIF. And there are several different ones. They may be animated, they might not be animated. I think this one probably is, especially because it's coming from the Giphy website. And you can see this simple animation with a girl with sunshine, which is kind of weird. That one's kind of a cool one. Let me pull that one up. Okay, so let's say that I want this picture. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to choose Save Image As. And again, you'll notice that it's Save as Type GIF image, so I'll just call it Sunshine. Okay, so those are your types. Now let's talk about how you can actually put them into a website. We're going to be using a tag that actually does not have a closing tag. And the command that we're going to use, it's called img space src. So the tag is the image tag, img, and we're always going to include this attribute, src. And remember that attributes are always included after a space after the tag. And then what we would do is put in quotation marks whatever the name of the file is and whatever the extension might be. And it's as simple as that to put a picture into a web page. One thing you want to keep in mind is wherever your pictures are located on your computer, you want to make sure that your HTML file is in the same location. If it's not, it gets tricky because you would have to include the full file path in the command, and that can be complicated to do. So I'm just going to have you add this, make sure picture file is located in the same spot as HTML file, or indicate the full file path in the command. If you have to do the thing with the full file path, then what you end up with is a bunch of backslashes to specify exactly what directory and subdirectory that the image is located in. So for our purposes, we're just going to keep it simple. Wherever you save your pictures, also save your file, which in my case, I typically like to use the desktop of the computer, and then I can move them later. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is create a web page, and I'm going to use those three pictures that I downloaded. However, what I think I'm going to do is simplify the name of the file. See what I mean about a cluttered page? So somewhere on this page, oh, Sheboygan Paper Articles, there we go. I'm going to open that up. So I have Sunshine, Sunshine, and then you notice this one that I downloaded that was the PNG file, and it has this really long file name to it. That's pretty typical. That'll happen when you download images off the internet. I always recommend that you rename the file. So you could just right click on it, choose rename, and name it something more simple so that it's easier to call in your HTML tag. So in my case, I have three pictures. They're all named Sunshine. Because they're different file extensions, it's okay to have file names that are the same. So I'm going into my notepad, and I'm going to throw in my doc type tag that I always want to include, and then my HTML tag. Do not forget that in the HTML tag now we need to add the attribute lang equals and then en in quotes. That's for accessibility purposes. Okay, really quickly I'm going to do a head and a title, and I'll throw in some heading text. And oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay, and then I'm going to put my images in the body. What I'm going to do at this point, I'm not going to change my background colors. Actually, you know what? I think I will. So let me go body BG color equals, and I'm just going to cheat and use the color name. And I'm going to put in my text and put in the color name as well. Okay. So here I go with some pictures. So I'm going to go image space src equals. So I got my image source, sunshine.jpg, image src equals sunshine.png, and then img src equals sunshine.gif. Now, what's not going to happen here is that it will not put those pictures on separate lines in the page unless the image is so large that it can't be next to each other. So what I might end up with here might be an ugly looking web page, but we'll check it out and see. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And I'm saving it in the same folder where my pictures are stored. I'm just calling mine images.html. So now I'm going to go to my folder, open up my web page. And so here is my JPEG picture right here. Here is my PNG, and here is my GIF. And it stuck them all next to each other. If the JPEG picture at the top had been smaller, they would have all been on the same line even. Okay, so again, JPEG, universal format, millions of pictures, high quality photos, and that's what you'll typically see on the internet. The sunshine picture in the bottom left corner is a PNG, and you can see that because it's floating over the background. And then of course we have our GIF to the bottom right, which is a simple animation. Okay, if I go back and I want to actually put them on separate pages, excuse me, not separate pages, but separate lines, I can throw in, if I want to throw in a P tag maybe, if I want a double space in between. I could just use a break tag if I want to, but now if I reload my page, it'll distribute it differently. So I have picture, 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 and they're all displayed separately. So those are the basics for putting a picture into a web page, but there's a lot more to it than just that. So one of the things that we always want to do with images is we want to add alternate text to the images. And the first thing that you need to know is, what does alternate text do? The answer to that is it gives a text description of the image. Now, the goofy thing about it is that if you're looking at your web page in a normal method, you'll never see the text description. You'll never see that alternate text. It's behind the image, so most of the time you'll never even see it. So then the next question is, well, why are you making me do this, Mrs. Rivera? What's the point? Well, it is very important to include for several different reasons. One of the reasons ties into what we just talked about in our last section, and that has to do with web accessibility. If I am visually impaired and I am pulling up a web page with images, I have the right, according to the Americans with Disabilities Act, I have the right to be able to experience those images. And because I can't see them, my screen reader, whatever type of adaptation I might have, will actually provide a spoken description for me of what the picture contains. That's one reason. Another big reason is that alternate text is used by search engines. So when you're doing a Google image search, a lot of times your results that you get are coming from connections between the alternate text description. Okay, another one that is an important reason is that it will display a description if someone has their images turned off. So you can, a user has the ability in a browser to adjust how things display on a screen. Some people actually turn their images off, and then they only have the text load on a web page. And reasons why they might do that would be if they have a limited internet plan or data plan. If you turn the images off, you're going to save a ton of data. If you are an Instagram user, for example, or a Snapchat user on your phone, those consume so much data just from the images. And pictures on a web page take up a lot more file space than text. So some people intentionally turn them off. If they do that, and they pull up your web page, the alternate text will show them what they're missing, what would be in that place. Okay, and then one more, another reason, and it depends on the browsers. But in certain browsers, if a user hovers over an image with their cursor, sometimes that alternate text will be displayed. And I can never remember which browsers do that. But if you test it out, you'll see it. Okay, so that's why it's so important to do. The other thing is how to add it. It's just an attribute. So we're going to add alt equals, and then you'll type a description, and you're just going to add it to the image tag. That's all you have to do. So if I go back to my sample file that I did, what I'm going to do is to my JPEG picture, I'll add alt equals photo of sunshine. Oops. My PNG file, alt equals transparent, I think it was like a clip art of yellow sun rays. I don't know, something like that. And my GIF file, alt equals animation of person using hand to catch the sun. Okay, whatever it might be. If it's a picture that has people in it, maybe your description might give credit to those that are in the photo. Okay, so now if I go back to my browser, I reload my web page, it's not going to look any different. Still looks the same. Okay. But if my images were turned off, instead of a picture, there would be a little box, and that box would contain the text. Okay, one of the other things that you want to be able to do with images is you want to be able to control the size. Maybe I have that top picture of the sunshine, the JPEG picture, but it's too large for what I'm looking for. Well, you can change the size of it within HTML if you want to, and what you would do is you would add, I can't type here, you would add either width equals, and you would put in a number, not actually hashtags, substitute that with a number, or you would add height equals, and you would throw in a number, and you would do that as an attribute to the image tag. And if you do that, the number that you put in, that represents the number in pixels. And remember that pixels are super tiny. So if you were to set a width equals 50, you might not even see the picture. Well, 50 you probably would. But if it was like 10, it'd be tiny, tiny little speck. Okay, so notice that I said you add either width or height. What you don't want to do is you don't want to do both at the same time. And the reason is it can distort the image. If you're forcing it into one proportion, it could not give you the image results that you're looking for. So if we just set one, it will automatically adjust the other. So if I set my width to 150, it will automatically adjust the height to reflect that change and keep it in proportion. And I am going to put the word proportionally in here too. So if I go back to my page, let me do just that. Let me change that JPEG picture. And I'm just going to add width equals, and then I'll set it to 200. Okay, so it's going to take that picture, it's going to make it 200 pixels wide. So I'm going to go back to my page here and reload and look at the difference with the top image. That's 200 pixels wide. And notice it kept everything in proportion. Now if I don't follow the rule about not using both, look what happens to this. If I do height equals and I set that to 200 as well, what you're going to see when I reload it is a distortion of the picture. Okay, so we don't want to do both. Just make sure I'm back to normal here. There, back in proportion. Okay, so that's how you can do it, but I am going to add a little note here that it's really better to change your size of the image outside of HTML. So it's better to do it inside of a photo editing program than doing it within HTML. It will help, especially if you're shrinking the size of an image. If you're doing it through HTML, you'll still have the large file size of the image. So data-wise, if someone is limited on their data, you could still take up a lot. So if I had a huge image on a page, but I'm going to shrink it down so it's only 100 pixels wide, and I'm going to do it with the width attribute, it'll display on the page the way I want it to, but it's still going to take up a lot of file size for that page, and you really want to reduce that. When those of us that have high-speed internet, our images load pretty quickly on a page, but if you're using a slower internet connection, you'll notice that the images can sometimes roll in pretty slowly on a web page. So if we don't change the file size outside of HTML, we can significantly slow down the loading of a web page. Okay, and you don't have to have a fancy photo editing program. You don't need something like Photoshop. You could do it within Windows. And I'm going to add something else too. You can put a border around an image on a web page if you choose to. All you have to do is you're going to add the attribute border equals, and you'll throw in a number. And you're just going to add that to the image tag. So kind of like some of the other tags that we've learned so far, the image tag can have lots and lots of extra instructions. If you want to change the color of the border, you could do that as well. Just like we did with our table, we could do border color equals and put in our hexadecimal code or color name. If you don't use the border color command and you're adding a border, that border will be whatever color your text is on a web page. So I'm just going to go back to my file. And I'm going to take that sunshine picture and I'm going to add a border to it. And when you're doing attributes, there is no special order that they need to go in. So I'm going to add a border of 20 to that picture, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to reload my web page, and then you can see that it put the border around it. It's not the color of my text, actually. I take that back. It's the default color, which is black. Okay, so now I'm going to add border color equals, and let me see if I put pink in there. If it takes that setting. but it did not. Okay, Mrs. Rivera's doing something wrong here. Unless Microsoft Edge doesn't like to accept that. Okay, I might have to come back to that. Okay, here is what I'm going to have you do. I stopped the video, I did a little research, found out that the border is deprecated in HTML. Deprecated, I believe we may have spoken about this before, or you saw it in a video. That's where there's a command that isn't included as the language progresses into new versions, but it's still typically accepted by browsers. But it looks like, although border's deprecated and you can still view it in a browser, border color is not. So the only other thing that I'm going to have you do is delete that last part about border color, and we're just going to leave that right out of there. I apologize for that. Mrs. Rivera is a little old school, and sometimes I still think of things in the old versions of the language. So that's why I always like to do a test to see how my web pages appear when I try to design them. So now I'm going to have you stop your notes. This is not going to be the end of this section. This is just part of it. This is the images, and then next in the next section of these notes will also cover links. So I'm going to ask that you submit these to me online, and please let me know if you have any questions.